Welcome back to the Fantasy Football Hub channel. Today I'm joined by the big man Bakar to preview Game Week 30. Now, on the face of it, Bakar, we were just chatting there and we thought that it could have been quite a simple game week, but in reality, there is so much stuff to go through, so many topics. There's about 10 different things that are just so high on everyone's agenda, decisions to be made. We're going to get into it all, but firstly, Bakar, let's talk quickly about last game week because you had an absolute blinder.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jack. Hello, and welcome to all the listeners and viewers. Great week for me, 147 points. Past 3 weeks have been really good, very, very kind to me. Just going through one of those spells where things are just falling in place, and I'm getting lucky, to be very honest. But hopefully I can build on this momentum because, as you've said, this game week is very, very tricky, and I'm very mindful of the fact that I don't sort of give away the gains that I've made in the previous 3 weeks. By making some stupid foolhardy decisions this week, because I mean, on the face of it, it doesn't look as tricky, but when you go into the minute details, I mean, for example, captaincy, benching headaches, those are the kind of things which will decide the week, which are likely to be very swingy, because I mean, on paper, those calls are very 50-50, but if they go wrong, they will hurt.
And there are so many of them as well. We're going to go through them all. But yeah, let's just have a little chat about the previous game week because it went really well. And as you say, the bench boost smashed it. So fair play. We talked a lot about holding on to that and when to use that. But you've gone from 350k to 88k. A little bit of respect on Bakar's name, everyone. He hasn't come fourth in the past for no reason. The man's on fire right now. And you say it's luck. I'm not so sure. I think it's just a little bit of a turn in a little bit of variance. But yeah, some good decisions proving some good outcomes. Okay, let's get straight into it, mate. The big man, Erling Haaland, he's back in training. Chat to me right now. What are your thoughts? Do I need to get him back in my team right away, or do I not?
Yes, I mean, if you're free hitting in 32 and if you can afford a move for free, I think the transfer is obvious. I just don't think you should wait because it's a transfer you will make sooner rather than later anyway, because City have a good run of fixtures. They have Leicester next week. They have the double coming up in 34, another double coming up in 37, and Haaland is Haaland. So it's, I mean, I need not go on about him. I don't need to actually jump into the underlying statistics to prove his pedigree. He's just a very good player to own. He's that kind of guy who, in my opinion, can do damage even in 30 to 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Even let's say in the worst case scenario that we don't get any news before deadline and he ends up being benched, he can do damage from the bench. Having said that, I do think Pep will give him minutes because he would want him to be in some kind of rhythm before buying. He hasn't played for 3 weeks now, and I do think that he would give him some minutes. I don't think he'll just throw him straight into the Bayern fixture. And the fact that he's been back in team training by Wednesday actually bodes well for him because City start training on Wednesday, then have 2 other sessions on Thursday and Friday. So if he's going through 3 sessions, and by the time we'll have the press conference on Friday, we hope that we can get some clues from Guardiola. But I think it was looking positive for Haaland, and you just can't afford to ignore a player of his pedigree, especially when you know that you're going to buy him back anyway. So why not just bring him in this week? Because someone like a Toney against Newcastle doesn't really have the same ceiling that Haaland against Southampton does.
And in terms of minutes then, what do you think? Just if you were to give a prediction, do you reckon he starts the game and comes off when it's done?
Yeah.
Or do you think it's more like we've seen this multiple times, he's come off at half time a few times after just being unbelievable in the half? Or do you think it's more a case that he may still be, I mean, obviously we don't know, so we're just guessing here, but do you think maybe his injury is still quite a bit of a factor and he might just try and get him warm for the Bayern game, so give him 20-30 at the end of the Southampton game?
I think he'd start the game and he's going to come off around the hour mark, 60 to 65 minutes. I think he's going to get 60 to 65 minutes. That would be my educated guess. But again, Pep does strange things and we can't really second guess him. But if that's my opinion.
You're right, though. We've seen it before, and undoubtedly we'll see it again this season, maybe in this game week. He doesn't need 90 minutes to score 20 points. Just a simple fact. So then, how do we get to him? Which sort of players should we be selling? Let's start with the big ones. Let's start with the premium assets. If you've got Kane or Salah, Is that an easy move to make?
If you have Salah, I won't sell him, regardless of the fact whether you're free hitting in 32 or not. If you have Salah, I won't sell him simply because of the fact that he's a good own throughout now. Because for the remainder of the season, Liverpool have a double in 34. They have Leeds next week. And the fact that, even after 34, their fixtures are good. So Salah is basically a hold to the end of the season, in my opinion. He was given a wake-up call by Klopp this week by benching him, but I do think he's going to come back against Arsenal, and his numbers at home are actually much superior to his numbers away. His XG per 90 is almost double, actually more than double than his XG per 90 away. So I do think this is a okay fixture for him. Arsenal are a good defense, and Arsenal tend to do better away from home as well, but I would still back Salah to get something against Arsenal. So I won't sell Salah firstly. Coming to Kane, if you don't have any other route to Haaland, I would reluctantly sell Kane for him if, let's say, if we get positive news from Pep in the press conference. I would make the move because even though Kane has Brighton at home this week and Bournemouth at home next week, Spurs aren't really playing that well. And I mean, Kane is the sort of guy who will continue to tick along. I don't think he has that hat-trick potential in him at the moment, given how Spurs are playing.
I agree.
Yes, he will be consistent. He's going to get those 6, 7, 8 pointers. But I mean, Haaland can get a brace in one half, really. I mean, that's what he was doing before he got injured. So if I had the choice to move from Kane to Haaland for free, I would do it. The tricky part would be if I did not have a free hit in 32. Because then you can argue and then you can potentially make a case for ignoring Haaland, because you can then choose to captain Rashford this week, Kane versus Bournemouth, and decide to just bring back Haaland after Arsenal in 34, which is the tricky part. And I mean, it's a very ballsy move and it kind of makes sense on paper, but you should understand the risks if you're going for it. I mean, personally, I think if you think that Haaland is the best captain this week, you should bring him in, even if you're free hitting, even if you're not free hitting in 32.
Yeah, I'm just looking back at some of these game weeks that he's had in the season. Against Forest, 68 minutes played, 17 points. Comes on against Fulham, scores 17 points against Wolves in 60 minutes. Again, it's not even worth me saying he's obviously an elite player. Okay, so it's a reluctant sell for Kane if you don't have a lot of cash in the bank, perhaps. But what if you do and you have the likes of an Ivan Toney or a Havertz or maybe a Watkins or someone like that? Some players that are in good form there, Havertz less so, but would you sell those sort of players instead of Kane or instead of Salah to try and get up to Haaland?
No, I wouldn't sell Watkins. I think he's a very good hold this week. He has a very good fixture at home to Nottingham Forest, and he has Fulham coming up in a few weeks as well.
Sure.
And he's in the form of his life. I just don't see any reason to sell him. When you look at XG post restart, big chance of post restart, he's actually just second to Haaland. His numbers have been absolutely incredible. His XGI, he's averaging almost a return in every game. So I won't sell Watkins for him. I think he's a good hold till at least game week 33. I think both Havertz and Toney are sellable. If you are in a position where you own both Havertz and Toney, then it is a very tricky call to make as to who to sell. Because Havertz has been misfiring, and so have been Chelsea. I mean, Chelsea registered like an XG of nearly five goals in the double game. We can score not a single goal. Well, Havertz has an XGI of nearly 2, and he got nothing as well. I would keep Havertz simply because of the fact that Toney is a ban and a suspension waiting to happen, and you won't want to put yourself in a position where you commit to selling Havertz this week and then Toney gets suspended for game week 31. So
sure.
It's just going to pile up your transfers. In that position, I would sell Toney. However, if you don't have a free hit in 32, then Toney is definitely worth keeping on to, and then you can sell Havertz instead.
Okay. Now, what if it's just team dependent, of course, and you find yourself, you know what? I'm trying to like kind of go around it here, but let's just talk about my team for a second. 2.1 million in the bank here. I say this because I'm sure there are other people out there in this position that haven't planned as well as me. I know for the likes of you, Bakar, will get onto your team, but you have enough money in the bank to just straight do Toney to Haaland, as was your plan. This was all already put in place, but I don't. So what would you do in a situation like mine where the only real route is Kane? Does it have to be him, or is there any sort of option to captain someone else and just leave him for a couple of weeks?
I mean, it depends if you can. Who are the other two strikers? Watkins, I assume, and Toney, right?
Well, let's not make it completely specific to my team, but yeah, the likes of a Watkins, a Toney, maybe an Isak, players that are in good form.
Again, if you can take a hit which is viable to justify, again, it's team dependent, as you say.
Yeah.
Then it makes sense to remove Toney for a hit. Having said that, if you let's say have a very near optimal team and you have no other route to Haaland rather than to sell Kane, then I would sell Kane for Haaland if you don't have any other route. But obviously, my preference would be to sell Toney, even if it's for a hit. I would do it if that hit is viable to justify. I mean, for example, if you're selling someone like a Rashford or a Bruno, I don't think that's viable to justify.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's move on to your team then for the upcoming game week, and let's do that transfer. So as it stands, is that what you're looking at doing, Toney to Haaland?
Yes, that's absolutely locked in. Unless we hear any news pre-deadline which says that Haaland isn't starting, that is what I'm going to do.
And in terms of captaincy, again, news dependent, would it be Haaland with what we know now?
That is tricky. I'm not set on the captaincy at all because, as I've said, I'm wary of him being taken off early. However, if we get news that he's starting, then I might go for him. It's a very tricky decision this week, Jack. I tell you what, I mean, I think this is one of the trickiest calls of the season when it comes to captaincy.
Really?
I can see legit 3 or 4 realistic captaincy options this week. I mean, there's Haaland, who's going to come back against a diabolical Southampton side. There's Watkins, who's in the form of his life, playing against Forest, who are terrible away, who've conceded the highest number of away goals this season. There's Rashford, who's likely to play as a number 9 against Everton, who have been conceding an XG per game of 2 under Dyche. So it's a very tricky call. I will decide after what I hear in the press conference, but assuming that everything is correct, I will resort to Haaland. But I'm really not sure. I mean, I can go to Rashford or Watkins as well. I can see merits in going for either, to be very honest.
Do you have any stats on Everton's defensive numbers where they concede chances in particular? Because I know people were quite excited for Rashford starting through the middle against Brentford, just because that is where they concede the vast majority of their chances, and that is where he scored his goal from. So that kind of lines up. What's Everton looking like?
Yeah, they have been conceding plenty of chances to strikers in previous weeks. I mean, recently they conceded goals to Brennan Johnson. Watkins scored as well. Havertz had plenty of chances against them as well. So yeah, they tend to concede plenty of chances to strikers. That is correct.
Okay. So yeah, definitely a food for thought.
Kane scored this week as well. Had decent numbers as well. So yeah, Everton they do concede plenty of chances to strikers.
So Rashford looking like a pretty decent. I mean, not
for sure.
Not even want to say outside candidate, because we know his effective ownership will be above 100% most likely. I wonder what Haaland's would be.
I mean, you look at the captaincy polls on Twitter. Haaland is number 1, Watkins is number 2, Rashford is number 3. I mean, there's a very close split between Rashford and Watkins, but Watkins is higher, actually, slightly higher.
I can't hate that. Watkins would have been the best captain in the double, right? Out of players that were in the pool of pickable players. So he's in the form of his life, as you say. Can't argue against that.
And Forest, as I've said, are terrible away. So I mean, I can't fault that. There's this school of thought which I mean, I've been posting about it as well in recent weeks that suggests that, Watkins is better away from home, but actually looking at his home numbers, they're actually pretty good in their own right, except for the one tough home game against Arsenal. I mean, his average home XGI is nearly 0.7, so he's averaging nearly a return per game. And, he's on penalties, and Forest have conceded the highest number of penalties this season as well. So, I mean, those things tend to add up. It's very close
Yeah.
because, when you look at Rashford, there's the fact that he's playing out of position. He's going to get an extra point for a goal and clean sheet. Watkins is on penalties, has the best recent numbers. While Haaland is Haaland. Haaland doesn't need 90 minutes. I mean, 60 minutes of Haaland is equivalent to 90 minutes of any normal player.
At least,
so it's
at
just
least.
it's very, very tough to weigh up.
You're right actually about Watkins, because I think the reason why there is that commonly held conception that he's, way better away from home is because of that run that he's on. What is it now? 6 or maybe 7 away games? Seven.
Yeah. Hasn't blanked under Emery in an away game. 7 in 7 basically.
But you look at the 2 most recent home games, still has very good underlying numbers, and could easily have scored it. I think that might just be down to a little bit more chance. All right, so we're talking about United players. Now, Rashford is obviously a lock in everyone's team, and we're talking about whether or not we should or shouldn't captain him. But the other 2 main United players, who me and you both hit in, a lot of people got in for the previous double, an absolute letdown. We need to talk about both of them. Let's start with Shaw, because he is the most pressing issue, given that he picked up an injury. What do we do with him?
I think we just wait and hope that he's fine, because ultimately you bought him in for the doubles in 34 and 37. If he's fine to go for, let's say, the next few fixtures, then I don't see a need to sell him, because he's a long-term pick and he's a pick that you're going to keep till the end of the season. But let's say we get news that he's ruled out for the rest of the season, then obviously you'll have to sell him. But in my position, I'm very comfortable benching him, because I don't see the need to remove him at this point in time, and there are better transfers to make, and he's a good long-term hold anyway.
Okay, let's go in a little bit more depth on that, because your team is, well, a lot of the players you have are owned by a lot of people. So in your position right now for the upcoming game week, say we get news that Shaw has a short to medium term injury, who would you start then instead of him if you weren't going to sell him, Botman or Estupiñán?
I would go with Botman. Newcastle are second for XGC and big chances conceded post restart. They have some really good underlying statistics, and I think a lot of people are in this predicament, as you say, whether to play the Newcastle, Brentford, or Brighton defender. I just
Brentford
think
as
Newcastle's
well.
defense. I just think their numbers are on a different level. So I'm very comfortable playing Botman as my Shaw substitute.
Okay, so that's Shaw, but I want to focus on Fernandes as well, because there's so much to unpack here. Because on the one hand, right, I'm seeing tweets from people like Mark Goldbridge. Now, make of him what you will, but I'm seeing tweets from also more reputable sources. No offense, journalists, saying he's playing phenomenally well right now. He can go in any position. He plays yesterday in the holding midfield role in Casemiro's absence and plays majestically and can just do a job. So he's in good form, like, in terms of actually playing football. But is he in good form for fantasy football? And what's going on there?
He's playing very deep. I mean, he was sitting next to the centre backs, and he was infuriating to watch as someone who's just hit him in this week. It really wasn't pleasant viewing. But there's not much we can do about it, because, as I've said, you need the United players for 34 and 37 because of their doubles, and their fixtures long term are good as well. Casemiro will be back in 31, so you can hope that Fernandes will move to a more advanced position from game week 31 onwards. But you'll have to bear with it this week, and it's almost like you're hoping that he gets something from a corner, maybe, because if Shaw is out, he could be taking corners, or if he can get lucky with a penalty, that's exactly what you're hoping for.
Is that the limit of what we're going for? We're saying that a player of his price has got very little to offer in open play.
I'm not expecting much from open play, to be very honest.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, so I'll bring up his average position in the last game. Number 8 there, very deep. I mean, five attacking players, or just players in general that are ahead of him in the game. And Casemiro comes back in 31, is that right? Yeah,
that's true. That's true, against Forest.
So it's likely that he may well be in a similar position against Everton. But then against Forest, you think that he would then progress further up the pitch and go back to what he was doing before this.
Right. Correct.
And as you say, the doubles are such that it's probably you mentioned a couple of weeks ago the five in midfield that you kind of want to target for the rest of the season that you have in mind, which were Rashford, Salah, the two Brighton midfielders, and Fernandes. So you think he's just worth keeping and just
Exactly. I don't think that changes. I don't think that changes. I think that template is going to stick for the rest of the season.
Fair enough. Okay, let's talk about Brighton midfielders then, because as it stands, I don't know. Who are you thinking of benching this week? Because you have Odegaard in your team. Tough, I say, fixture away to Liverpool. But then the Brighton fixture against Tottenham away is also extremely, I don't know, on paper, both of them are quite challenging, but who knows in reality. Who are you thinking of benching?
I'm not going to be benching the Brighton Mids. I don't think I will go there. I think I'll bench Odegaard.
Right.
It's close. It's close, but at the moment, I just think that Brighton are playing incredible football. In fact, I was looking at some of their numbers, and they've actually scored in each of their 7 away fixtures, and on 6 of those occasions, they've scored twice or more. Right, so they're scoring plenty of goals, regardless of opposition, and I think they're going to get plenty of spaces to counter against Spurs. And I think March and Mitoma, their goal threat is superior to Odegaard. I think Odegaard can get a return against Liverpool as well, but I just think the ceiling of March and Mitoma is higher personally. That's what I think. Another question here is that, a lot of people are in this position where they have McAllister, whether to bench him or not. I don't think McAllister, when playing 10, is the best of the Brighton Mids. However, and Ciso came on in midweek, and he was very bright again. He's actually started. He's actually came off from the bench in the previous 2 appearances and looked very, very lively. He in fact scored against Bournemouth as well. So there's the school of thought which believes that he could come in and play as a number 10 with McAllister dropping deeper. So, if there was a case for someone to bench this week, it would probably be him, because there's a chance that he can drop deeper despite the fact that he's on penalties.
Yeah, it's one of those that we're not really going to be too sure until the actual game itself. And you think against a good team in Tottenham, perhaps he might drop into that deeper role. I might be wrong here, but it seems as though against the better teams, he can play a little bit deeper.
He wasn't exactly playing as an advanced number 10 in this double either. He was playing slightly deeper. He was playing like a number 8.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because previously he was making a lot of runs in the box in this double. I think he was actually lucky enough to get a penalty, because his open play threat was minimal.
Yeah. Quite similar to Bruno, not playing in the deepest role, but again, I've got his average position up on screen. He's the number 10 here against Brentford. I just showed against Bournemouth as well. He's nowhere near as high as someone like a March, but interesting nonetheless. So, in order of the Brighton midfielders, in terms of who you would bench first, what would you go for out of the 3?
I think McAllister.
So McAllister first, and then you would so then Odegaard. What if you had Saka, Mitoma, and March? Those are probably the best 3 this week. So out of those 3, because it's a very tough decision. Who would you go for out of those 3 to bench?
It's a tricky call. It's just the fact that Saka's on penalties. I think I would bench Saka over March and Mitoma, simply because Saka tends to do much better at home. I'm not even kidding. I think Brighton will score 2 against Spurs.
They are in the form of their lives, so fair enough. Players like Mitoma, the absolute bane for me, but just doing phenomenally for managers like you. Okay, then let's move on to goalkeepers now, because this is what I'm saying. Even this is a tough call. I'm on the Fantasy Football Hub My Team tool. And the points prediction between Mitoma and Odegaard is 0.1 difference, which is the same as it is between Kepa and Raya. It's a toss up there again, or is there a clear preference there for you?
I think the preference is clear in this case. Despite the fact that Raya makes more sales, I'm going to go with Kepa, simply because Newcastle in away games, they tend to accumulate XG much faster at a much quicker, frequent rate than Wolves at home. And Wolves will be without Neves, who's a very key component of their midfield. So I think I'm going to back the Chelsea defense to come good again. Hopefully there's some new manager bounce. Apparently Lampard's on the way. I'm not sure how that is going to work out.
Just before we start recording, become official.
I'm not sure how that is going to work out, but hopefully we can see some bounce over there as well.
I'm pretty sure that he'll win the Champions League, my friend. That's written in the stars. Very important information there about Neves, something that I didn't know myself. There you go. Picked up a suspension until the 22nd of April. And yeah, as you say, the absolute fulcrum of that side. So that is very, very interesting. Okay, so that's keeper. So what you're saying is you're going with double-double in defence. Is there any sort of argument to hedge slightly and say, one crazy thing could happen in a certain game, let's play another player just in case, or you're quite confident in that decision?
I mean, I tend to look at each decision in isolation. If I do think that a team is more likely to keep a clean sheet than the other, then I don't really look at the double up or hedging. I mean, I just think it's a better decision to make on paper given the information we have, and that's what I'm going to do.
Absolutely. Okay, let's talk about people that haven't used their wildcard yet, because obviously Haaland does seem like the obvious transfer in this game week, but we can move on a little bit further looking at the next game week, and people that might be wildcarding in 32 or 33, looking to perhaps bench boost in 34. Just given the fixtures, and I'll bring them up here, are there any fun outside of the template differential picks that you have in mind that could be great for people that may have lost a little bit of rank and are looking to gain and going for those low ownership players?
Yep. I think the City guys are the ones to go for if you're looking for a differential. I mean, Gundogan, Mahrez, Grealish. I mean, Grealish has had like 10 consecutive starts next year of 0.56 per 90 since the restart. So his numbers are really good. Mahrez is perfectly fine till game week 33, 34, because that's when we expect Foden to come back. Until then, he should be safe. And Gundogan is getting plenty of chances in an advanced position as well. So if you're looking to go different, then I'd go to City.
What about Grealish then? Because he seems to be a little bit of, kind of flavour of the week. Obviously, probably played his best game the other day. What are his underlying numbers saying in comparison to the likes of Gundogan then?
His underlying numbers are decent. I mean, 0.56 XG per 90 since the restart is good, but a large portion of it is coming from assists. So he's second for big chances created among the City players, but he's had just the 3 big chances himself. So he's not getting as many chances as you'd like. And Pep did mention it in one of his quotes. He did say that he'd actually ideally want Grealish to chip in with more goals, but he's safe. I think he's the safest of them all when you compare him to Mahrez and Gundogan. Gundogan, even with his age, could get rested with the Champions League around.
Yeah,
I think Grealish is the safest. So if I was looking to pick one for security, I think Grealish is safe, but I think Mahrez is more explosive.
It is slightly scary though, going into this run of quite a number of fixtures for City, playing 2-3 times a week, and knowing that there is that inevitable rotation that we can't quite predict, as always.
Yes, that's true. But I mean, I do expect them to trounce Southampton. I expect them to trounce Leicester even badly. So I mean, it's a high risk, high reward thing.
It's the age-old debate with City players, isn't it, in general? Players that we're not sure about, but they're going to get 0-1-1, then 22. And over the course of 3 game weeks, that's a great return, but you have to have them for that period of time, really.
You have to buy a ticket to the lottery, basically.
Absolutely. Okay, final question from me then is about the free hit chip. First of all, I saw you tweeting about this and I thought it was very interesting. How do you value the free hit chip against the bench boost? So let's talk about the previous game week, and just can you explain what chip you think is more valuable and why? And then let's talk about, for people that haven't used it yet, in a more practical sense, when is the best week to use it?
I think each chip has its own merits. I think bench boost is very powerful. It gives you 8 extra players. Free hit is very powerful. It essentially allows you to change the entire squad. I don't think triple captain possesses the same explosiveness, even though you're getting a better player because you're likely to use it in a premium player in a double game week. But I would rather have 8 extra players as opposed to 2. So more often than not, you'd see the bench boost outscore the triple captain, because essentially you're just getting one player with 2 fixtures. And I think it's better to have 4 players with 2 fixtures because the likelihood of points increases.
I think also we have been quite fortunate this season that our benches, well, there are a lot of players that are very, very good for their price that are quite undervalued, if we're being honest. The likes of Botman. I mean, Newcastle won the best defence in the league, and he was
Arsenal.
4-3, 4-4. Yeah, exactly. When the Arsenal midfielders, exactly, absolutely, loads of very good value in teams.
Brighton.
Yeah, Brighton. Mitoma was 4.9, man. Like, what is that?
Brighton are a joke. Like,
insane.
Seriously.
What? Just final question, because I know I said final question already, but just a fun one. What sort of price do you think March, Mitoma, McAllister are going to be next season?
Mitoma could be 8 million, I think.
Wow.
7.5 maybe. I think 8. I'd expect March McAllister to be 7.
Yeah.
Maybe
Crazy.
McAllister 7.5. Depends on how they finish the end of the season. If, let's say, March smashes it, then he can be 7.5 as well.
Hopefully that's incoming. Is March a bad finisher? What's going on there? Why is he underperforming so much?
I struggle to fathom. I mean, I own him. I've played him in so many weeks, but his numbers, he's been ticking along. I mean, he's not been a disastrous pick. He continues to get points, but they're not exactly reflective of how good his numbers are, because his numbers have been absolutely incredible. This is another one of the reasons why I want to play my Brighton Mid this week, because I don't want to bench the wrong one, because it's a terrible feeling.
And we had that already. When was it? A few weeks ago. Yeah, that massive hauls for, what was it, Mitoma and McAllister on a lot of benches.
Versus West Ham. Yeah, exactly. I was one of them. I benched March. I played Mitoma. Sorry, I played Mitoma. Yeah. I played March. I benched Mitoma.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
For me, it was McAllister, exactly.
And just one of those unfortunate outcomes.
It's actually a very, very valid reason for playing the Brighton mids, because you know it's coming, but you don't want to miss it.
I mean, exactly. Hopefully they produce and deliver the goods this week.
Okay, my friend, I think that is going to do it for this one. Is there anything else you want to cover, or is that it? That's been quite extensive, I think.
I think we've covered everything.
Absolutely. So much to get through there. Sometimes you look at a game week 30 with just this late into the season, just a few fixtures, one per team. You think, okay, pretty simple week. Not the case this week, not the case. I think it's going to be very, very swingy. Some big 50-50s across the team, from the keeper to the forwards. Transfers are up in the air right now. Bakar, your transfer is pretty much locked in, but team news dependent. So guys, if you do want to see that confirmed, the link to Bakar's team reveal, which will be posted on Friday, or at least up until the deadline, is down below in the description and in the pinned comment. Bakar, thank you very much as always. And we'll leave you with that, guys. See you on the next one.
Cheers.